Hi and welcome to WEH Videos. My name is Skip and this is part 2 on our VFR flight from Benton Field to Chico Muni. Alright, before we get into the second leg, I want to just review a couple of things. Remember now we started from Benton and we flew to the power plant. And the reason we flew out in this direction was we wanted to keep out of the Class Delta airspace for Reading Muni. So, in order to make sure we were far enough away, we did two things. We tuned our NAV1 radio into the Reading VOR 1084, and we also tuned in NAV2 to the Red Bluff VOR 115.7. And we clicked radials that would help us know if we were getting too close to Reading Muni, and also help us know when we actually reached the power plant. And you guys are going to have to do this from now on in this flight. As I mentioned in the first video, the landmarks that I have there are not there. I put those in there, so you're going to have to use the nav radios to know exactly where you are. So just to make sure you understand what I'm talking about when I mention radials, I'm just going to add the Reading Muni VOR, and I'm going to select another spot out here. This is a compass rose, all these numbers around here. So we have north, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90, 180, 240, 250, and there's 251. Now they're also, since this is a VOR, these are referred to as radials. And so by selecting the 251 radial in our NAV1 radio, we will know exactly when we are over the plant. And that is when we will know when to make our turn to our next waypoint. And we also use the Red Bluff VOR, so let's go ahead and add that to the plan. And now when we look at this, we know that if we are on these two radials, we know we are exactly over the plant. And we're ready to make our turn for the next leg. One more thing you need to know about radials in the VOR is the farther away you are from the VOR, the farther the distance between the two radials. So if you're way out here 20, 30, 40 miles away, you have a lot of distance between the radials. But as you get closer, notice it gets tighter and tighter, and the radio will become much more sensitive. And when you get really close to the VOR, that needle is going to be bouncing all over the place. So this is just something you need to be aware of as you're flying to or from a VOR. So if you remember, our second leg is from the power plant down to a rest area right off of Highway 5. So how do we know when we are there? Well, when we created our flight plan, we decided that if we tuned our NAV1 radio to the RDD VOR, we want to be on the 158 radial, and it's a distance of 9 nautical miles. So let's take a look at that. Let's just grab this waypoint and bring it over here. And we're just going to add the Reading 1084. And here we have a 158, 8 miles. We're looking pretty good. And we could use the DME off of that VOR, but let's add a safety measure here. Let's come down here to the Red Bluff VOR, and let's just add the Red Bluff 1157 VOR in here. And now let's see what we have. That's telling us the rest area is 15 miles from Red Bluff on the 159 radial. Now we have two references that will help us make sure we are in the right place. So let's go ahead and add that to our flight plan up here, and that is the Red Bluff VOR. So now we're ready to go. We're going to fly from the plant to the rest stop on a heading of 130. Distance is 11 miles. We're going to be traveling roughly 100 knots. It's going to take us a little over 6.5 minutes, and we have our radios ready to be set. So let's get going. All right, what I've done is I've backed up a little bit. I have moved us back before our first waypoint, because what you're going to have to do when you're flying this is you're going to make this turn before you get to the waypoint. And hopefully by the time you make the turn onto our next heading of 130, you'll be exactly over the power plant. All right, and here we go. So we're watching the deviation needle come over, and we want to turn just before it gets to center. And that'll say we're right on line with the 251 VOR. So let's start our turn now. We're going to head to the 130 heading. And we've just kind of gone past the power plant, but that's okay. Here we are on a 130 heading. And now we're on our second leg. Let's start the clock. And we're going to switch over to our 132.2 to get a hold of Oakland Center. And we're going to let them know what we want to do. So we're going to call Oakland Center Skyhawk 84 Delta Lima is 5 miles west of Redding Muni. Request flight following to Chico Muni. And they're going to respond and tell us they want us to give us a squawk. And let's just say the squawk is, let's go 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay, so we've got our squawk and our transponders, so now they can identify us on the radar. And now, if you remember, we need to set our nav 1 and 2 radios. So we need the 158 radio for nav 1 and the 159 radio for nav 2. So let's go ahead and set nav 1 to the 159 radio. Which is right about there. And let's go ahead and set the nav 2 to 158. Which is right about there. So now we're just going to continue on. Now don't worry about having both of these match up perfectly when we get to our waypoint. That's going to be really hard to do. What we're really concerned about is the closer VOR, which would be the Redding Muni. We need to be 9 miles from there on the 159 radial. So we're going to watch this as the deviation needle moves over. The other thing we want to pay attention to is our altitude. We need to be at 5,500, so I think we can climb a little faster than this is. So let's just trim the nose up a little bit. So while you're doing this, I would really encourage you to do this manually. Don't set your autopilot. Don't try to do any of this stuff. Fly it manually. It's a good idea to learn how to fly your airplane instead of just using the autopilot. So you want to stay on altitude plus or minus 100 feet, on heading plus or minus 5 degrees, and speed plus or minus 10 knots. Now, you notice that I said that we're going to be doing about 100 knots here. Well, that's because we're climbing. Once we reach altitude, we'll be able to level off and we can pick up our speed to 110 knots. But I just kind of took a wild guess between 80 and 110, so we're going to be roughly 110 knots to get there. We're halfway there, 3 minutes to go. Nothing's happened on our needles yet. Remember, we had power lines to look at. So here's power lines on the right, and here's some power lines over here on the left. So we're pretty much on course. We could look over here and find the Redding Airport, and that's a real good indicator. Right, that's off to our left, and that's right where it belongs. So we know we're doing pretty good. Also notice I got off course a little bit. Not a big deal. I'm going to work my way back. Okay, here's 5,500. I'm going to level off here. Oops, my controller's a little sensitive. Pardon me. Yeah, I forgot to adjust my trim wheel there. So now we're going to trim. I'm going to back off on the throttle a little bit. We don't want to keep that engine at full power. We had it there while we were climbing. And now we're just going to trim for 5,500, and we want that 110 knots. Still on the course of 130. Now remember, the to from doesn't really matter here. The nice thing about having it from here, we know that the VOR is behind us over here a little bit and off to our left. So the needle's going to come in from our left here. That kind of helps us, but it doesn't really matter. If we had it set to 2, the needle would be over here and it would work its way in from the right. So we're 4 3/4 minutes away, and we have other landmarks to look for. So we can look over here and we can see, wow, look at that. There's Lake California. Remember our flight plan? And over here we have the ranch, the Flying In Something Ranch. Now again, I created these airports. They're there, but just runways. I did some work in WED and added just a chunk of concrete there and through buildings just so you could see them a little easier. But these are the things we talked about, right? So if we had an emergency, we have 2 airports here that we can land at, and that's really helpful. All right, so now the deviation needle is starting to move. So this is the one we're going to work off of. We know we're I'm a little off on the heading now, but I kind of compensated since I went the other side there. So we'll get back to the 130. And where's Highway 5? Highway 5 is a little hard to see here. That's definitely not it. We know it's out in front of us. That's probably Highway 5 right over there. And now the needle's coming in. We're going to make this turn. Look at this, 8.2 miles on the radial, 8.3. We can actually start turning a little bit towards our next heading. What would be our next heading? Our next would be from the rest stop to the fairgrounds, a heading of 149. So we can start moseying over here on a heading of 149. Now let's just go ahead and do that now. And we're going to stop here and take a look and see where we are. So we're going to pause. All right, we wanted the 158 radial, 9 nautical miles from the Reading VOR. So let's take a look. We are on a 158, 159 radial, pretty close here. We are exactly 9 miles from the Reading VOR. Let's take a look outside and see how we did. Well, how about that? There is the rest area right there. Now you're not going to see this. When you do this, I, again, put this chunk of concrete there and put the buildings in. However, this little loop here is there. So you will be able to see that part of the rest area. So when you make this flight, you can look for this little racetrack here, and that would be great. So we're looking really pretty good here for this part of the flight. So let's take a look at the NAV2 radio and see how we did. So on our NAV2 radio, we wanted the 159 radial and 15 nautical miles from the Red Bluff VOR. So let's take a look. Let's just go here and switch over to the Red Bluff. And look at that. We can see it's 15.6 miles, and we wanted what? 15 nautical miles. So we're a little farther away than we really wanted to be. A half a mile. Like I said, this is VFR flying. This is not a big deal. And I'm not sure what radial we are on, but this is close enough. This is really good. We have the visuals that we're looking at as we're flying, so we're really doing well on this flight. All right, and finally, we said it was going to take us a little over 6.5 minutes. So how did we do on time? Well, it says 6 minutes and 31 seconds. I think we're doing really well so far in this flight. And I think this is a good place to stop on this part of our flight. We'll pick up the third leg in the next video, and we'll cover some more things like setting the mixture. We're at 5,500 feet, so we need to make some adjustments here. So that's it for this video. If you like this, please click the like button. If you'd like to leave a comment or send me a message, that would be great. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.